A tiger crawls into a thicket of low green leaves, bleeding from wounds that should kill him, and 3 days later walks out healed. That is the legend Korean grandmothers have told for centuries about a plant they call tiger grass. And the strangest part of the story is not the tiger. It is that modern dermatologists in Seoul, Paris, and New York now believe the old women were right, and that this same humble herb growing wild in Asian rice paddies outperforms prescription retinol in clinical trials with 3.5 times fewer side effects, and you can grow it on your kitchen windowsill in a container the size of a coffee cup. The plant is called Centella asiatica, known across the skincare world as cica, and in traditional medicine as gotu kola. Over the next few minutes, you are going to learn exactly why this unassuming creeping herb has quietly become the most studied anti-aging ingredient in Korea, how it rebuilds collagen at the molecular level, why it adds hydration where retinol strips it away, and how you can grow your own living supply at home for the cost of a small clay pot and a sunny window. By the end, you may never look at the $80 serums in the beauty aisle the same way again. Centella has been quietly working on human skin for more than 3,000 years. Long before laboratories and patent applications, healers across India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and southern China were prescribing it for wounds that refused to close, for memory that began to fade, and for the slow erosion that comes with age. Sri Lankan elders chewed a few fresh leaves every morning, swearing it added decades to their lives. Ayurvedic physicians ground it into pastes for burns and scars. Traditional Chinese medicine listed it among the longevity herbs, the small handful of plants considered powerful enough to extend human life. And Buddhist monks, the story goes, used it to keep their minds sharp during the long, silent hours of meditation. The plant traveled along the same spice routes that carried cinnamon and pepper, eventually settling into Korean and Japanese herbal traditions during centuries of trade. But here is where the story turns from folklore into science. In the 1990s and the early 2000s, Korean cosmetic chemists in Seoul began revisiting old herbal manuscripts looking for ingredients they could test under modern conditions. Centella kept appearing. They started running clinical trials, and what they found launched an entire industry. Korean dermatologists began prescribing cica creams for patients recovering from laser treatments and chemical peels. Major K-beauty brands built billion-dollar product lines around it. Within a decade, that humble pond-side weed became the foundation of an entire shelf in every Korean pharmacy. And cica creams crossed the ocean to Sephora, where they now sit next to retinol on the most recommended lists. So what is actually happening inside the plant? The magic comes down to 2 molecules with names that sound like a chemistry exam. The first is madecassoside. The second is asiaticoside. Both are triterpene saponins, a class of compounds your skin recognizes and responds to in remarkable ways. When applied topically, asiaticoside signals the fibroblasts in your dermis, the cells responsible for building skin scaffolding, to crank up collagen production by roughly 25 to 30%. Madecassoside does something even more interesting. It boosts type 3 collagen, the soft, springy, youthful form of the protein that disappears as you age. Most anti-aging products work on type 1 collagen alone. Centella works on both. Together, these compounds form a standardized extract called thicket, Centella asiatica selected triterpenes, and that is what shows up in the most rigorous clinical research. Now here is the part that should make any retinol user pause. In 2021, scientists ran a network meta-analysis, which is a fancy way of saying they pooled the results of multiple wrinkle studies and compared everything in the same statistical pot. Centella asiatica significantly reduced wrinkles. Its efficacy came surprisingly close to prescription tretinoin, the gold standard in anti-aging medicine. But the side effect numbers told a different story entirely. Centella produced 10 adverse events across the trials. Tretinoin produced 35. That is roughly 3.5 times fewer reactions. No purging phase, no flaking, no sun sensitivity. And on top of all that, Centella increased skin hydration measurably, while tretinoin actually pulled moisture out. Patients tolerated daily use without any of the brutal break-in period that makes so many people give up on retinol within the first month. But there is a deeper layer to this story, and we will get to it in just a moment because you need to understand something else about what is happening under the microscope. In a 6-month double-blind trial, researchers tested a formula containing 0.1% madecassoside combined with 5% vitamin C. They measured deep wrinkles, they measured firmness, they measured elasticity, and then they took histology samples, actual slivers of skin examined under powerful magnification. What they saw was extraordinary. The damaged elastic fiber network in the dermis was rebuilt, not masked, not temporarily plumped, actually rebuilt at the structural level. This kind of true repair is rare even with prescription treatments, and when the study was published in Experimental Dermatology, labs in France and South Korea raced to replicate it. They did. So how is a humble creeping herb doing what billion-dollar pharmaceutical research struggles to match? The answer comes down to 4 mechanisms working in parallel. First, collagen synthesis activates inside your fibroblasts, the same pathway that gives babies their bouncy skin. Second, the antioxidant compounds in Centella neutralize the free radicals produced by sunlight and pollution, the invisible damage accumulating on your face every day. Third, the herb strengthens your skin barrier, the lipid layer that holds moisture in and irritants out. This is the exact opposite of what retinol does in the early weeks. Retinol thins the barrier. Centella reinforces it. And fourth, the triterpenes are powerfully anti-inflammatory, which is why French and Korean burn units have used Centella extracts on real patients for decades. Now for the part that changes everything about how you might think about your own bathroom shelf. This plant, this medically validated, clinically tested, billion-dollar Korean beauty ingredient, is one of the easiest herbs in the world to grow indoors. Centella is a tiny, creeping perennial with round, scalloped leaves about the size of a coin. It is perfectly happy in a 4-inch container, which is roughly the dimensions of a coffee cup or a small mug. It needs moist soil and indirect light through a window. A sunny kitchen, even in a cold climate, works beautifully. It grows wild in tropical Asia, but it adapts to indoor conditions with very little fuss. A small clay pot on a windowsill will produce fresh leaves year-round, and the plant spreads by sending out little runners across the soil, multiplying on its own without you ever having to collect seeds. You can find it at Asian plant nurseries, herbal apothecaries, and online specialty growers for just a few dollars. So what do you actually do with the leaves once you have them? The traditional Sri Lankan practice is simple. Pluck 2 or 3 small leaves in the morning and chew them. The flavor is mildly bitter, faintly grassy, somewhere between parsley and watercress. You can steep them in hot water for a few minutes to make a quiet, earthy tea that has been brewed in Asian kitchens for thousands of years. Those same fresh leaves contain the same active triterpenes you are paying $80 for in a tiny serum bottle at the beauty counter. If you want to apply them topically, you can crush a small handful into a paste and rub the juice directly onto clean skin. Korean home recipes blend the leaves with honey for a soothing mask. Vietnamese cooks add centella to cooling summer drinks. Indian Ayurvedic traditions soak the leaves in coconut oil for weeks to make a herbal scalp treatment. The plant in your coffee cup is, quite literally, a small pharmacy of compounds that researchers in Seoul are still cataloging. But there is a catch, and you should hear it before you swap out your serum. Centella has only about 30 years of rigorous clinical research behind it, while retinol has more than 40. Pregnant women should avoid oral use of the plant entirely, and topical use during pregnancy still lacks adequate study data. Standardized TECA extracts remain the most clinically validated form, so a wild leaf from a windowsill garden will not deliver an identical dose every time. Triterpene concentrations vary depending on sunlight, soil, and growing conditions, Indoor cultivation tends to produce gentler concentrations than tropical sun exposure. A small percentage of people experience mild reactions on first contact with any new botanical, so dermatologists still recommend patch testing on the inside of your forearm for a day or two before applying anything new to your face. Here is the modern twist that ties the whole story together. The most cutting-edge dermatologists are not telling patients to choose between retinol and Centella. They are telling them to use both. Retinol at night for the deep cellular renewal that nothing else quite matches. Cica in the morning for repair, calm, and barrier reinforcement. The combination dramatically reduces retinol irritation while preserving every one of its anti-aging benefits. The famous Korean 10-step routines often layer cica directly after stronger active ingredients to counteract the harshness. Western dermatologists adopted the approach during the K-beauty wave, and recent studies suggest the two ingredients work through complementary biological pathways, almost as if they were designed for each other. Many experts now describe this pairing as the new gold standard in anti-aging skincare. Think about that for a moment. A plant that healers in Sri Lanka chewed 3,000 years ago, that monks ate to focus their minds, that wounded tigers supposedly rolled in to heal themselves in Korean folklore, is now sitting alongside prescription retinoids as one of the most respected anti-aging tools in the modern dermatology toolkit. The traditional healers documented results that took modern science 30 years to confirm. The plant survives in places industrial agriculture cannot reach and grows so eagerly that a single small pot can keep producing leaves for years. A windowsill garden quietly delivers what tiny luxury bottles charge a small fortune for. For anyone whose skin has been burned by retinol irritation, this gentle green herb offers a path that ancient civilizations walked long before the cosmetics industry existed. The Korean beauty industry built billion-dollar empires on a creeping weed that fits in a coffee cup. Maybe the future of skincare is not in a laboratory at all. Maybe it has been sitting on a kitchen window, waiting patiently for the rest of us to catch up to what the tigers, the monks, and the grandmothers already knew. If you have a sunny sill and a small clay pot, try growing a single Centella plant this season and watch what 3,000 years of quiet wisdom looks like when it is rooted in your own home.